the Panama Canal are actually causing a traffic jam in one of the largest trading routes in the world right now.
President Trump saying repurchasing the canal is vital for our national security.
Panama's promise to us has been broken, and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships.
Panama's leader clapping back at Donald Trump. Over the weekend, the US president-elect called on the Central American country.
Imagine the world's most important waterway hiding a secret that could totally change global trade in an instant. The Panama Canal, an engineering wonder that moves billions in cargo every day, is now facing something totally unexpected. What started with some minor vibrations has turned into a crisis, sending shockwaves through the global economy. And guess what? We didn't hand it over to China. We gave it to Panama. And now we're taking it back. But there's something even crazier going on beneath the surface. A discovery that flips everything we thought we knew about this engineering marvel on its head. This isn't just another maritime tale. It's a revelation that could shake things up, big time. Picture a regular morning at one of humanity's greatest engineering feats, with huge ships cruising through clear waters, carrying the lifeblood of global trade. Now, imagine that same morning turning into something that would rock the very foundations of international commerce. What started as minor disturbances in the Panama Canal's lock system was about to spiral into one of the biggest maritime crises we've seen. Deep down below, something was brewing. The first signs popped up as strange vibrations, pretty subtle at first, easily brushed off as just normal operational sounds. But these vibrations had a secret, one that soon caught the attention of engineering experts all over the globe. As the vibrations kept going, getting stronger and harder to ignore, the Panama Canal Authority realized they were dealing with something out of the ordinary. Enter the underwater drones, the latest tech sent down to check out the murky depths. What they found was alarming. Tiny fractures spreading through key parts of the infrastructure, each one a potential sign of disaster. But these weren't just regular wear and tear issues. They hinted at something much more serious lurking beneath the water. What makes this discovery even scarier is how crucial the canal is for global trade. Every day, ships carrying billions in goods pass through these waters, representing the complex web of international commerce. When the first whispers of possible structural problems came out, the impact was immediate. Markets started to wobble. Shipping companies held their breath. Governments around the world were on high alert. As engineering teams scrambled to grasp the situation, they were about to uncover something that would turn this engineering crisis into a mystery that goes back centuries. The scale of what we're dealing with here is way bigger than just routine maintenance. Geological experts, armed with high-tech monitoring gear, have discovered what looks like a previously unknown tectonic fault line, a sleeping giant lurking beneath one of the world's most vital waterways. This find is changing how we understand the region's geological stability and raising questions that keep engineers up at night. Just think about what's at stake. A waterway that handles over 5% of global maritime trade, a key link between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, now possibly at risk from forces beyond our control. The rapid response from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers really shows how serious this situation is. When the best engineering minds drop everything to check out a canal, you know something big is going down. But what's really interesting is how this is sending ripples through the global economy. Markets from Shanghai to Rotterdam are already starting to factor in the chance of major disruptions. Shipping companies are quietly figuring out backup plans for different routes, even if that means taking longer and pricier paths that remind us of the old days before the canal existed. This is the kind of situation maritime experts have talked about, but really didn't want to see come to life. With pressure building on the Panama Canal Authority, They're in a race against the clock to get a grip on these structural issues. Every boat that passes through now carries not just cargo, but a heavy load of uncertainty. It's not just about fixing the problems we have right now, it's also about whether we're ready to rethink some of the basic ideas we've had about global trade. But while engineers were dealing with this crisis, they were about to uncover something that would make their structural worries seem minor. Hidden beneath the surface were ancient structures that had been waiting for centuries to share their story. The real scope of the Panama Canal crisis came to light through a flood of technical data that left even the most experienced engineers scratching their heads. Advanced analysis showed a web of stress patterns that had never been seen in modern maritime engineering before. The damage went deeper than just surface issues. It revealed a complicated network of weaknesses that could threaten the very foundation of this vital waterway. Geological survey teams, armed with the latest seismic monitoring gear, mapped out a detailed network of fault lines beneath the canal zone. Their findings painted a pretty unsettling picture. The tectonic activity wasn't just a one-off. It was part of a bigger geological system that had somehow flown under the radar for years. The data hinted at movement patterns that could lead to serious failures with little to no warning. The technical assessment grew increasingly alarming. Stress tests showed that key support structures were hanging on by a thread, operating right at their limits. Every passing vessel wasn't just a regular trip, it was a calculated risk. The engineering teams found themselves in a tricky spot, trying to keep things running while also preventing a potential disaster. Real-time monitoring systems started sounding alarms more and more often. The structural issues weren't just static, they were shifting and evolving challenges that seemed to get worse every day. As one area showed some signs of stabilizing, another would start to raise eyebrows. The canal's complex lock system, which used to be a shining example of engineering, now showed signs of stress that didn't fit the usual repair methods. At the same time, shipping companies around the globe started getting briefings that forced them to face a tough truth. The canal's operational limits were being revised downwards, causing a big shakeup in global maritime logistics. Vessels that used to pass through easily now faced strict new rules, all backed by engineering data that couldn't be ignored as the reality of the crisis became clearer. The economic fallout began to ripple through global markets, turning what started as an engineering issue into a potential economic disaster. Major shipping companies started rerouting their vessels around Cape Horn, adding weeks to their journeys and driving transportation costs through the roof. This disruption created a tangled mess of supply chains affecting everything from consumer electronics to essential medical supplies. Economists observing the situation began to draw alarming comparisons to the Suez Crisis, but with a key difference. This wasn't just about one blocked channel. It was about the long-term stability of a crucial global trade route. Insurance companies began to rethink their risk assessments, leading to premium increases that sent shockwaves through the maritime world. The real-time economic impacts showed up in unexpected ways. Ports from Singapore to Rotterdam faced massive congestion as shipping companies scrambled to adjust their routes. The ripple effects reached industries far beyond maritime trade, hitting automotive plants with parts shortages, retail giants warning of inventory delays, and energy markets preparing for possible disruptions in fuel transport. Global trade analysts started sketching out scenarios that grew increasingly grim. The chance of ongoing disruption at the Panama Canal threatened to change global trade patterns that have been in place for over a century. Markets that used to take the Panama Canal's reliability for granted are now waking up to a tough new reality. This crucial shortcut might not be as dependable as it once was. Boardrooms around the world are buzzing with emergency meetings as companies try to tackle a big question. How do you keep things running smoothly when one of the world's most important trade routes starts to show signs of trouble. As the economic fallout spreads like dominoes across the globe, a new challenge is popping up. There's a race to stop this engineering mess from turning into a full-blown geopolitical crisis while global trade holds its breath. The Panama Canal crisis isn't just a local issue anymore. It's becoming something that could seriously shake up global commerce. Imagine container ships that used to glide through this vital waterway now having to make tough decisions that impact the entire global economy. Supply chain managers everywhere are watching their carefully planned logistics networks fall apart in real time. Major retailers are already sounding the alarm. This disruption isn't just about delayed shipments. It's about completely rethinking global supply chains that have been built over decades. Manufacturing hubs in Asia, which relied on reliable trans-Pacific routes, are now staring down the barrel of longer shipping times. The impact is felt at every step of the supply chain, from raw materials to finished products. Stock markets around the world are reacting with wild swings. Trading floors from Wall Street to Tokyo are seeing shipping and logistics stocks bouncing all over the place as investors try to make sense of the uncertainty. This market reaction isn't just about the immediate disruptions. It's about the long-term effects on global trade patterns that have driven economic growth for generations. What's really worrying is the timing. Global supply chains are still trying to recover from recent hiccups, and this crisis could spark a new wave of shortages and price hikes. Industry analysts are keeping a close eye on key indicators as inventory levels drop and transportation costs climb. It's not just about finding alternative routes anymore, it's about questioning the very sustainability of the global trade patterns we've taken for granted. Alternative shipping routes, once seen as pricey backups, are now being seriously considered. But here's the kicker. These alternatives come with their own challenges that could change global commerce as shipping companies scramble to reroute vessels around Cape Horn. A new reality is setting in, where the predictability of global trade might soon be a thing of the past. The Cape Horn Passage, which used to be just a historical footnote, is now a critical lifeline for global commerce. But it's not just about longer trips. It's about reshaping the economic relationships that have defined our modern world. Industry experts are now predicting scenarios that range from worrying to downright catastrophic. The immediate hit on shipping costs is already sending shockwaves through commodity markets. Fuel consumption for these longer routes has shot up, adding an environmental twist to an already tangled crisis. Ships burning more fuel for these extended journeys are raising eyebrows about sustainability commitments, especially in this age of climate awareness. Major ports are feeling the strain like never before. Singapore's maritime hub, Long Beach's sprawling container terminals, and Rotterdam's massive port facilities are all dealing with serious congestion as vessels try to adjust to these new routing patterns. The domino effect is mind-blowing. Delays at one port ripple through the entire global shipping network, impacting every corner of international trade. What's particularly alarming is how this crisis is hitting smaller economies hard. While big trading nations can handle some of the fallout, developing countries that depend on smooth maritime trade are really feeling the heat. Rising costs and longer delivery times are putting essential supply lines at risk, affecting everything from medical supplies to food security. The stock market's reaction has gone from shock to ongoing worry. Shipping indexes are starting to show patterns similar to past global crises. But there's a key difference this time. It's not just a temporary hiccup. This could be a major change in how global trade works. As everyone tries to deal with these wide-reaching effects, there's a pressing question on everyone's mind. Can we find engineering solutions before things get worse? In the midst of all this pressure, something huge is happening at the Panama Canal It's not just about fixing some cracks anymore, it's about completely rethinking how we handle infrastructure on a large scale. The repair efforts underway are the most ambitious maritime engineering project since the canal was first built, with teams working around the clock in a race against time. Advanced technology is at the heart of it all. We've got AI-powered monitoring systems that track every tiny shift in the canal's structure, using a network of thousands of sensors to provide real-time data that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. What's really impressive is how they're combining predictive analytics with hands-on engineering. The scale of this repair job is mind-blowing. Engineers aren't just fixing problems, they're coming up with groundbreaking solutions that could change maritime infrastructure forever. They're using specialized underwater repair drones with advanced materials technology, capable of working in conditions that are too risky for human divers. These machines, guided by super-precise control systems, can make repairs with incredible accuracy. But here's the kicker. Timeline projections are looking pretty grim. Initially, they thought the work would take months. But as engineers dig deeper into the challenges, those timelines keep getting pushed back. Fixing one issue often uncovers 3 more, making it feel like a game of whack-a-mole with global trade hanging in the balance. The cost estimates are reaching jaw-dropping figures that even seasoned economists are raising their eyebrows at. When you consider not just the direct repair costs, but also the wider economic impact, we're talking about numbers that far exceed the original construction costs of the canal. As engineering teams stretch the limits of what's possible, we're entering a new reality where traditional fixes might not cut it anymore against the forces of nature and time. The level of innovation happening at the Panama Canal is unprecedented in maritime history. Advanced materials science is coming together with cutting-edge robotics as engineers push the envelope. Teams of specialists are working in shifts to implement solutions that mix traditional engineering know-how with breakthrough technologies. They're using machine learning algorithms to predict where structural stress points might be, turning this repair operation into a full-blown tech revolution in infrastructure maintenance. Behind the scenes, supercomputers are processing terabytes of sensor data every hour, creating the most advanced infrastructure monitoring system ever. These systems don't just track existing issues. They can even predict potential failures before they happen, letting teams take action ahead of time. However, this predictive capability has uncovered a tough reality. The challenges are moving faster than traditional solutions can keep up with. The financial implications are huge. Initial cost projections have been revised upwards time and again as the real extent of the repairs becomes clearer. We're not just looking at direct repair costs, we also need to factor in the cutting-edge technology, research and development for new solutions, and long-term monitoring systems. When you also consider the economic hit from reduced canal capacity during the repairs, the numbers are staggering enough to make government officials and investors stop and think. What's particularly interesting is how this crisis has sped up innovation in maritime engineering. Technologies that were just theories a few months ago are now being fast-tracked into development. Specialized repair drones are working in synchronized swarms, capable of handling complex repairs in conditions too dangerous for human divers. These machines, guided by AI systems that learn and adapt on the fly, represent a major leap forward in infrastructure maintenance capabilities. Time is ticking, and it's the one thing we can't afford to waste. Engineering teams are up against not just wear and tear, but also the crazy pressures from the global economy. Every day we lose capacity can mean billions in losses worldwide. What started as hopeful timelines are now looking a lot more complicated. We're at a crossroads where geological challenges and our engineering skills are throwing us some serious curveballs. But here's the interesting part. Out of this crisis, new engineering methods are popping up. We're not just patching things up anymore. We're completely rethinking how we fix infrastructure. Teams are coming up with flexible repair strategies that can change as conditions shift, using materials that can heal themselves and adapt to stress. This isn't just about dealing with the current mess. It's about changing the game for infrastructure maintenance around the globe. Engineering teams are in a race against the clock, pushing the limits of modern technology. But there's a bigger question looming. What does all this mean for the future of global infrastructure and our ability to keep it up in such an unpredictable world? Now, let's talk about global trade. Environmental scientists are sounding alarms that go way beyond the Panama Canal's impressive structure. What we're seeing isn't just an infrastructure problem. It's a wake-up call about how climate change is reshaping the lifelines of global commerce. The challenges facing the canal are stripping away our illusions of control over nature and revealing vulnerabilities we can no longer ignore. They're real, they're getting worse, and we have to face some tough truths about how connected we all are. The watershed around the canal, once celebrated as a marvel of ecological engineering, is now telling a cautionary tale. Lakes Gorton and Alula, which are vital for this waterway, are showing stress patterns that go against a century of historical data and engineering beliefs. Every ship that passes through the locks uses up millions of gallons of fresh water, and that's becoming a precious resource as climate patterns get more unpredictable. The water management system that we once thought was brilliant is now struggling to keep up with nature's changing moods, leaving engineers to deal with scenarios their predecessors never dreamed of. On top of that, the global political scene is shifting just as fast as the environmental one. Countries are rethinking their strategies, forming new alliances, and rekindling old rivalries. China's Belt and Road Initiative is more urgent than ever, and Russia's interest in Arctic shipping routes is growing by the day. Meanwhile, the US is trying to juggle its historical ties to the canal with the new global power dynamics. Wall Street analysts are painting scenarios that would have seemed wild just a few months back. The global supply chain isn't just facing disruptions, it's being reimagined from the ground up. Big companies are ditching long-standing just-in-time inventory practices, while emerging economies are worrying about being cut off from essential trade routes. These economic ripples affect everything from consumer gadgets to global food security, forcing a rethink of the economic models that have supported global trade for ages. Experts are now watching closely as similar vulnerabilities pop up in other important maritime facilities. The Panama crisis has turned from a one-off issue into a warning sign for infrastructure everywhere. From the busy ports in Southeast Asia to Europe's advanced coastal facilities, the threat of climate-induced disruptions is becoming more real. We're moving toward a new way of thinking, one where the easy predictability of global trade gives way to a future focused on adaptability, resilience, and the humbling truth that nature ultimately calls the shots on our economic fate. The way our global trading system is changing isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a bigger shakeup that's challenging everything we thought we knew about international trade. The economic predictions coming from top financial institutions are painting a picture that makes us ask a big question. What do we do when the foundation we've built our modern world on starts showing not just cracks, but serious weaknesses? Market analysts are now looking at scenarios that go way beyond the usual risk assessments. We're seeing what some experts are calling cascading uncertainty, where a disruption in one area sends shockwaves through totally unrelated industries. Major investment banks are changing their long-term growth predictions, adding what they call an infrastructure vulnerability premium into their economic models. The geopolitical landscape is shifting right before our eyes. Traditional alliances are being put to the test as countries rush to protect their trade interests. New trade routes are popping up, and it's not just about logistics. It's changing diplomatic ties that have been solid for years. Countries with alternative maritime routes are suddenly finding themselves in a position of unexpected power during international talks. What's really eye-opening are the discussions happening in corporate boardrooms around the world. Companies that used to plan just for the next quarter are now thinking ahead for a decade with contingency strategies. The whole idea of supply chain resilience is being turned on its head. Industry leaders are pouring billions into what they're calling route-independent logistics, moving away from the Panama-centric trade patterns that have ruled global commerce. The insurance industry is also stepping up to the plate with a complex response. Major underwriters are reworking their risk assessment models to include climate change factors and infrastructure vulnerabilities, which could change the game for global shipping economics. Some analysts think maritime insurance could be completely overhauled in the next 5 years. The tech sector's response has been pretty interesting too. Silicon Valley is throwing money into autonomous shipping solutions and alternative transportation tech. We're seeing huge investments in everything from AI-powered route optimization to experimental cargo ships designed to reduce reliance on traditional canal systems. But underneath all these strategic moves is a bigger truth. We're at the end of an era where global trade routes seemed set in stone. The business world has to face a future where being adaptable isn't just a nice-to-have, it's essential for survival. As we find ourselves at this crossroads in global commerce, one thing is super clear. The Panama Canal crisis isn't just about a waterway in trouble. It's about how we need to rethink our relationship with the infrastructure that connects our world. The real question isn't whether we'll adapt. It's how fast we can reimagine our future. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think is coming next.